Hi all, Forge here. Just my video entry into Jon Locks 100 subscriber giveaway contest. So if you haven't checked out the channel, go check out Jon Lock, links down in the description below. So what we have to do is pick a lock, so that's playing right now, playing in the background, and then tell us something interesting. So he recommended a good story or a life hack or even a TV show or anything that's just not related to lockpicking. So I lead a pretty boring life, but I thought I would just hit you with some interesting things that I find interesting anyway. A couple of them are sort of to do with what I do for a living. So I'm a scientist, and then a couple others are just like a personal interest. So first interesting fact, the old adage of a crazy cat lady, not necessarily based in myth. There is a parasite which infects cats and infects mice, rodents, mice and rats. And what it does in mice and rats is actually changes the way that the rat or the mouse behaves in regards to cats. So it lowers their aversion to cats. So normally if a mouse smells cat urine, it'll avoid the area, it'll have nothing to do with it. But when they get infected with this parasite, what it actually does is it removes that from the rat or the mouse. So this makes them more likely to meet up with a cat and then get eaten. And you might be thinking, well, what good is that? Like, the parasite gets eaten. But what it actually does is the parasite has this weird life cycle where it lives part of its life when it's immature in the mouse or the rat. And then in order to reproduce, it has to go into a cat. So what it does is it gets the mouse or the rat eaten by the cat, and then it can reproduce and live its adult life in the in the cat, before it then gets excreted from the cat and gets picked up by the mouse again. So a really beautiful but scary way that something can, convert the way an animal works into its benefit. And this has actually been shown to have similar effects in humans. So humans that are infected with this parasite, which is called Toxoplasmosa gondii, show decreased aversion to cat urine. So, and there's other neurological effects that can happen. And this parasite actually changes the DNA of the host. So, these is not just like a little thing. This is pretty severe changes. So, some of the effects we don't really know yet. So it's quite interesting. Another biology fact. So you might have heard about these things before, called telomeres. So telomeres are basically little caps that sit on the end of our DNA. And the DNA is what basically controls and tells your cells what they need to do from day to day. So do I make this? Do I do that? Am I being infected by a virus? What do I do if I'm getting attacked? And what happens is when your cell replicates and splits into new cells, you have to reproduce this DNA and copy it. But the cells are smart. So if we get damage to the DNA, which would then prevent us from being able to copy it, the cell goes, there's something not quite right here. So it has a lot of repair mechanisms that come in and fix the DNA. The issue is though, when we're copying our DNA before we have cell replication, the ends of the DNA themselves look like a break in the DNA. So you have these repair mechanisms that might come in and go, oh, hang on a minute, this is not right, let's fix this up. The problem with the repair mechanisms are they're not 100% perfect, so they do make mistakes. And what this means is that if this happens enough, you get these compounding mistakes in your DNA, which causes mutations and bad things to happen, basically. So this can lead to cancer, or, in the best case scenario, the cell will die and you won't have to worry about it. So what these telomeres do is they act as like a cap or a shield. So think of them as like the little plastic things on the ends of shoelaces, and they're called aglets, by the way. What they do is they stop the shoelace from fraying and from being destroyed. And telomeres do a very similar thing. So they basically stop the DNA from looking like it's damaged and needing to be repaired, and allow DNA replication and then cell replication to occur without any further damage to the DNA. Really cool system. They think that this is possibly one of the reasons why we age, is because in infants and young children, they have these telomeres, well, everyone has telomeres on their DNA. They have the protein that makes these telomeres still active. But when we get older and move into adolescence and adulthood, this protein stops working. It just stops working, and they don't necessarily know why. But they were thinking that if they can kickstart this protein again, they might be able to add more telomere on and keep the cells alive for longer, which could slow down aging. So really interesting area of research, in my opinion. All right, on to something a little bit more entertaining. So I have a movie recommendation, and this is a pretty wacky one, and it's a decently old movie, but bear with me, it's a wild ride if you're willing to watch it. So the movie is called The Rocky Horror Picture Show, and it's from 1975, and it's touted as a musical comedy horror, and it's got a few people that you would recognize in it. So it's got a semi-famous Australian singer called Meatloaf. He makes an appearance in there. And I'll just read you the first little sort of snippet of introduction to whet your appetite for the madness that is. And if you watch it, you'll definitely have heard a couple of the songs that are in there. So it goes something like this. The story centers on a young engaged couple whose car breaks down in the rain near a castle where they seek a telephone to call help. The castle or country home is occupied by strangers in elaborate costumes celebrating an annual convention. They discover the head of the house is a Dr. Frank Infurter, an apparently mad scientist who turns out to actually be an alien transvestite who creates a living muscle man named Rocky in his laboratory. The couple are then seduced separately by the mad scientist and eventually released by the servants who take control. Now, if that isn't a crazy blurb for a movie, I don't know what is. But check it out, even if it sounds a bit out there for you, and just think about the impact that a movie like this would have had in 1975, because it's something else. It really is something else, and it did pretty well. It's a bit of a cult hit, so and then finally, a recommendation for a TV show. So this is another somewhat old one because I'm not exactly a young man myself. Stargate SG-1, sci-fi, great series. Kind of overshadowed, in my opinion, by other series like Star Trek and, the Star Wars stuff. But brilliant series, based originally off the movie Stargate, which is an okay movie, but the series is where it's at. And it spawned a couple of spin-offs, which are good, but nothing really compares to the first one. And if you're into sort of cartoons or animation, Rick and Morty's massive at the moment. That's a recommendation for me. And if you haven't checked it out, check out Adventure Time. It's technically a kid's cartoon, but it's got some pretty adult plot moments, and I actually find it quite entertaining. So they're my recommendations. Apart from that, sit back, and if you want to watch the rest of the picking, go for it. Otherwise, no stress, and I'll see you on the other side.